Hello, Guardians. Welcome back to Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast. I am one of your hosts, Corey Deering, and alongside me, as always, is Josh Finney.
Josh. Yeah, we're not doing fun names tonight.
Nope, no fun tonight. No fun tonight.
No fun whatsoever tonight. This is.
Tell me where you've heard this before, Josh. Tell me where you've heard what we're about to talk about tonight before.
Pretty much every episode of Xbox Casuals we've done ever.
Yeah.
This very show last November. Yeah. We all kind of woke up to a bombshell yesterday morning. I'm just gonna dive right on into it. There's no fun to be had. We'll talk about the story progression that we got this week, which is actually really cool. We'll talk about that next week. I don't think it's really appropriate to go into stuff that made me really excited this week.
Yeah, probably not the right time to be excited about.
Yeah, it's not the right time to be excited. But yeah, if you haven't done the story mission for this week, I urge you go do it, and we're gonna talk about that and the lore implications next week. But we woke up yesterday morning. So for reference, we're recording this Thursday evening, August 1st. July 31st, we wake up in the morning, and it was late morning Central Time when I saw it, that Bungie had tweeted out something kind of ominous. And I want to read exactly what this, their tweet was, well, let's just say unique. They basically said, here's the path forward. And we were like, what? This morning we shared an important update with the Bungie team on the difficult decision to eliminate 220 roles at Bungie. I actually thought that I was being rickrolled at first. I thought maybe that I had gotten, what's that? Hard drived. I thought that somebody was fucking with me. And then I actually read the blog post, and I got madder and madder reading this. Yeah, because this is written by Pete Parsons, okay? And we're gonna get the fucking Pete Parsons in a minute. All my homies hate Pete Parsons. We're gonna get to him in a little bit, but
boy, do I have some words.
Oh boy, do I have some words for him and his car collection. 220 of our roles will be eliminated today, representing roughly 17% of our studio's workforce. Now, if you're keeping track at home, I have some numbers for you that Jason Schreier was nice enough to share with us yesterday, assuming I can actually find Jason Schreier's tweet now that is no longer bookmarked for some reason. 220 people laid off, 155 are moving to Sony, with 75 of those to a new studio within Sony.
So these are... Stop right there. 220 people have been laid off.
Yes.
The people going to Sony are an extra 155 people other than the people that were laid off, correct?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yes. This is on top of the 100 from last fall.
Yeah.
So if you're keeping track at home, last fall in November, they had 1,400 employees. They're down to 850 now.
Yeah.
850. Excuse me. Of the 75 that were supposed to move to a new studio, Jason says it's actually closer to 40. So I walked it back. I apologize. So 35 people may have had their jobs at Bungie saved. Regardless, this is staggering. This is startling. If you add all of this up, that is a reduction in roughly 40% of the studio from what it was 10 months ago. That is... I mean, at best, that's alarming. At worst, and honestly, the truth is it is gross corporate and management negligence. Bungie is a studio that pranced around during the pandemic, bragging about how they were fully remote. They had already been shifting towards that anyways, and this and that. And anytime that the studio got in trouble, up through like last August, they were still doing this. Come work at Bungie. We got all these openings. And then the layoffs started happening. And I want to continue through some of this statement first before we get into like the ugly details of this, right? These actions will affect every level of the company, including most of our executive and senior leader roles. Oh boy. I'm ignoring what he's choosing to say here about care and respect and severance packages. I realize all of this.
Getting severance packages, unlike the last time. Although we haven't heard what it was, right? I mean, the last time they had, especially healthcare, right? I mean,
they did get stuff last time because in Washington you are required to do that,
right? But it wasn't like nearly as what the stuff that I've heard coming out of this was.
No, this feels like it was much more Sony mandated.
Yes.
And this was much more wide ranging and things like that. We'll get to why this is happening because I've got some thoughts, and that's going to tie kind of directly into the compensation packages. This is hard news, especially following the success we've seen with the final shape. But as we've navigated the broader economic realities over the last year, and after exhausting all other mitigation options, not nuking my salary, by the way, this has become a necessary decision to refocus our studio and our business with more realistic goals and viable financials. We are committing to 2 other major changes today we believe will support our focus, leverage Sony's strengths, and create new opportunities for Bungie talent. First, we are deepening our integration with SIE, working to integrate 155 of our roles, 12% of the studio, into SIE over the next few quarters. They've worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us together to save a great deal of talent that would otherwise have been affected by a reduction in force. So, to keep in mind, this is actually saving 155 jobs. 155 of these jobs, more jobs would have been lost. We would have been up to 375 lost if Bungie had gotten their way. Instead, 155 of them are going to move to a new Sony studio, which Jeff kind of talked about this on Gamesmess Mornings today. Jeff Grubb, he said that this sounds like it's going to be a studio that exists within the Bungie building still, which is just fucking weird.
Yeah.
But whatever.
That building is massive, so
yeah, because secondly, we are working with PlayStation Studios to spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fiction fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. This will be a time of tremendous change for our studio. Let's unpack how we ended up in this position. Oh boy. I'm going to take a drink here. I have poured a nice, good bourbon tonight, Corey, because I'm still processing the last 30 hours, to be frank with you.
Yeah, it's it's something. It's
Ooh, that's good.
The sad thing is what he's going into is about to go into is what we've been covering since the show started.
Essentially. Yeah. It's stuff that we've been covering since the show started, stuff that we kind of wondered last year, should you really be pushing ahead with some of this?
Yeah.
For over 5 years, it has been our goal to ship games in 3 enduring global franchises. To realize that ambition, we set up several incubation projects, each seeded with senior development leaders from existing teams. We eventually realized this model stretched our talent too thin, too quickly. Gee, who would have ever fucking thought? It also forced studio support structures to scale to a larger level than we could realistically support, given our 2 primary products in development, Destiny and Marathon. Which, by the way, Marathon is still like at least 18 months out. Additionally, in 2023, rapid expansion ran headlong into a broad economic slowdown, a sharp downturn in the industry, our quality missed with Lightfall, and the need to give the final shape and Marathon the time they need to ensure both projects deliver the quality our players expect and deserve. We were overly ambitious. Our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded when we began running in the red. As this new trajectory became clear, we knew we had to change course and speed, and we did everything we could to avoid today's outcome, even with exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges. These steps were simply not enough. As a result, today we must say goodbye to incredible talent, colleagues, and friends. Fuck you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, Pete Parsons. You did not attempt anything. From what we have gathered from folks who got fired last time around and folks who were let go yesterday, there were no attempts being made. Senior leadership was caught blindsided by this. Even though a lot of them were kind of expecting something like this to happen, I don't think anybody expected it on the scale that it happened. Among the people who were let go, I'm not reading any more of this statement. This is PR nonsense.
You left out the worst part. One of the worst parts.
What did I leave out? What did I leave out?
They ended with the game announcement.
Oh yeah, I don't fucking care about
Jesus
that right
Christ.
now. I don't fucking care about that. I think that's so silly.
But that's my point. Is like you're trying to apologize to 220 people that they lost their jobs by ending your sorrows with a game announcement. What the
Yeah.
fuck are you doing?
Yeah. God. So some of the folks who have been impacted. Oh boy. One of the senior audio programmers, Natalia Polak, who says that she was the only fully dedicated audio programmer. A procedurally generated sound designer, Tavaz Sherman, who, according to Fallout Plays, is responsible for a lot of the sound effects present in Salvation's Edge. Corey McCaster, who works in music production and design, the lead of music operations, Nadia, was laid off. Oh boy, this is where I'm not going to read everybody, but these next four really sent me spinning. One of the narrative leads, Quan Prang, got laid off. One of the narrative designers here, Kalani, got laid off. If you've read any of the Nezarec lore, she was responsible for that. And then two senior narrative designers, Robert Brooks and oh god, if this one will ever load for me, Hazel Monfratten. You should know Robert is one of the ones who really took charge of seasons. If you have enjoyed any of Crow's story, he is responsible for almost all of Crow's arc. As well as what I think is personally the best moment in the Final Shape campaign, when the Vanguard is sitting around the fire reuniting. He is responsible for that cutscene. He is responsible for a lot of the stuff that happened in Season of the Deep, including Lance Reddick's final voice lines. The Witness cutscene of the Witness's origin comes from him. A lot of the most impactful moments in the seasons have come from Robert. After Season of the Deep, I did not know this at the time. Nobody really did. They kept it a secret. He left Seasons to go get the Final Shape across the finish line, and this is how he's been rewarded. Hazel has done a mirage of things. One of the things that immediately comes to mind that I know that they worked on was the Season of the Haunted lore and storyline. A lot of that was Hazel. So some of the best storytelling that we've gotten, these folks are now gone. I believe there were a couple more from the narrative team that were hit. They're not in this list that I have on Reddit. Most of QA is gone now. A good chunk of QA is gone. The lead video developer is gone, who makes a lot of those banger trailers that we love. That person is gone. Lead capture artist is gone. Capture manager is gone. God, there were several social positions impacted. And then just some come from across the board. There were a few from the marathon team, others from art departments, UI designers. There is a lot here. This is obviously not an exhaustive list. The list I'm looking at right now has 50 names on it, and that is not even a quarter of who got laid off.
Right.
So I'm gonna. There is no good. There is no good. I was gonna say let's start with the good.
What good?
if you are going, and keep in mind, another name that I know was included in this, that I've seen reported elsewhere, Sky Lewin, who is responsible for a lot of the music post Michael Salvatore, and even while Michael was there, has also been laid off. Sky has been with Bungie for a very long time, dating back since before Destiny 1, I believe. Kind of became the number 2 after Marty O'Donnell left. Was fired, really. This all to me points to a gigantic problem at the top. It is the top, and it is nothing else.
And it's not
the question
Bungie,
being asked around the industry today is why does Pete Parsons still have a job?
Right. I was going to say this is not, and by top we mean at Bungie, not at Sony. Right?
Yes, yes. It should be clear. The person who was responsible at Sony is no longer there, and that's Jim Ryan. Right. This is a speed run for running into the ground. Steven Totillo's piece on his GameFile newsletter basically insinuates, and I apologize that I don't have any direct quotes to pull from that because I don't have my credit card near me and I can't sign up for a free trial without a credit card apparently. Insinuates that essentially sources that he talked to within Bungie said that if they hadn't done the Sony purchase, and we kind of had this feeling last year, it was kind of coming out with Jason in a piece that Jason wrote, and it'll probably be out publicly tomorrow, I would imagine, in what he's writing for Bloomberg, that if they hadn't taken the Sony offer, the studio would be insolvent by now.
Oh, I'm sure.
I
mean, there's no question at this point.
So I want to pose a question to you before we get into some of the finer details of all of this. Is it pretty apparent to you, is it as apparent to you as it is to me, that the majority of the issues that we have spent as gamers, that we spent years blaming Microsoft for, Activision for, and Sony for, were actually a result of the leadership's team spearheaded by Pete Parsons and Jason Jones? How far back do you think we can go with this?
Oh, God. I mean,
because for me, I think I can go. I mean, most of the people who wanted to leave Microsoft were no longer there by the time Destiny was a serious project.
Yeah, I mean, I
understand that one because you didn't want to make Halo forever,
right? Well, my thought actually is probably when they signed the Activision deal, when they realized they didn't have Microsoft resources anymore, right, to build their game.
I'm of two minds of when this happened. Either when the problem started happening, it was either, like you said there, the first public sign I think that we can point back to, if we were to trace all this back. And again, I've recommended his book before, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. If you have not read it, I especially encourage you to pick it up. It's regularly on sale on Kindle for like $1.99. Jason Schreier has an entire chapter on Destiny 1 in there, and the hurdles that Bungie faced even getting it out the door. The first public sign I can kind of go back to of, oh, there is a leadership problem at Bungie, now that we can connect the dots, honestly goes all the way back to when they fired Joe Staten 10 months before release. Mm-hmm. And decided to rework the entire storyline.
Yeah.
That is where I go back to. I have a really hard time. I think going back beyond that is a little difficult unless you're following the account of somebody like Jason. But basically, it's insinuated that Jason Jones and a small group led the ouster of Joe Staten. It's never really been made clear if Activision supported that or not. We know Activision supported getting rid of Marty O'Donnell. We do know that. And that ended up actually like being a great thing for everybody involved, I think. But you went and got rid of Joe, though, who basically created the universe. You know? And it's so funny how we've had to loop back to so many of Joe's ideas. Like Crow being in the Vanguard, it was a Joe Staten idea. That was who Aldrin was supposed to be Crow originally. Like,
yeah,
that is a real thing in the original pitch of Destiny, in the original trailers. I mean, that is something that is real.
I mean, wasn't Crow essentially supposed to be the Shah Han character? Like, guiding you through that opening?
Crow was supposed to be Shah Han / Cade. Cade was supposed to have a much smaller role, and then they realized after D1, oh shit, we kind of need a character that's really jokey. Let's have Nathan Fillion do it.
Yeah.
You know, not that he wasn't already voicing Cade there in D1, but that's why, you know, he's like the tension breaker in The Taken King. And man, I don't even know. Like, so if you trace it all the way back to there, that is 11 years that this bullshit's been going on. You know, we've looked at other points. I remember when they got out of the publishing contract with Activision, we all celebrated it. You know, and I still think that's probably the right move. I'm going to choose to defend that still. It's everything that comes after, which is gross negligence, and there's no one overseeing to make sure shit's getting done. They also lost both High Moon and Vicarious Visions helping them.
Right.
Which we know there was one really good thread, and I really wish that I had the name of who wrote the thread, because they wrote a very, very good thread earlier today about some of the projects they'd worked on, from everything from the Infinite Forest to the Vexcalibur mission. And they were saying how High Moon was already helping develop Forsaken content, and they got sent to Syracuse to go or Albany, wherever it is, to Vicarious Visions for a 3-week business trip to give them a crash course in developing for Destiny. And we've all talked about it, but losing those resources really, really hurt that first year after the split. You look at the downgrade in seasons. We went from Opulence to Undying. We went from Forsaken to Shadowkeep.
Yeah.
And the quality just wasn't there. And then, you have a pandemic on top of that afterwards. So Beyond Light probably had to... I will maintain forever Beyond Light had to pivot from what it was supposed to be. And that's like that's the reality of the situation, right? But they were still delivering the content. Seasons were kind of good there for a while. We talked about it before. We had about a year and a half where we were like, man, seasons are really good. And then you realize it's the same fucking loop every single season. Every 3.5 months, it's the same exact loop you're getting into.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, leadership needed to step in and say, hey, we got to pivot from this, but they didn't think they were doing anything wrong. Oh, our numbers our active users are still up. People are still playing, Yeah, because you did things like introduce introduce darkness subclass. You retired all the raids into the vault so your numbers spiked so everybody could play all that content before it disappeared during arrivals. The whole length of this show could kind of be a what you shouldn't have done as an executive at Bungie. 200 episodes later and we're still sitting here wondering what the plan is. And there's no accountability from the top. And when I say the top, I'm not talking people like Joe Blackburn or Katarina, who just left. I'm not even talking about Luke Smith. I'm talking about the people who authorize the budgeting and who ultimately steer the studio. The people that Luke answered to, although I do think Luke and Mark share their own portion of the blame here. It's become really clear when management gets the fuck out of the way, we get really, really good stuff. When they gave them 15 months to make the Witch Queen versus 12, look at how good it was. When we got the extra time for the final shape and we got into the light and everyone got out of the way and they were allowed to do these things, they wanted to bring back the old weapons. Look how that was received. Look at how it was received when they wanted to do everything they did with the final shape and with Dual Destiny and Salvation's Edge and all this and that. Look at how different that is compared to Lightfall, which had to be shoved out in 12 months. Lightfall should have been delayed, and it wasn't. I don't understand what Bungie's aversion to doing the Final Fantasy XIV model is. Release something every 18 to 24 months as a major expansion and have seasonal content or other smaller drops in between. I don't understand what the problem is here. Now, I can kind of answer that.
They can't afford it.
I mean, they clearly can't afford it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what they can't afford it. They have to put something out so they can make money to keep going.
It's clearly so dumb because imagine all your resources were focused on this. Because Marathon, we start getting the whispers about Marathon as Destiny is in a terrible place and needs all these things fixed. And we come to find out a lot of the PvP team has left to go to work on Marathon. I think that was the beginning of the end for a lot of folks' faith in this game, like those who are chronically online. Of course, I was like, I don't think so. I think that's silly. Even last fall, I was like, I don't know. I'm not ready to sound the alarm yet, but I'm getting there. Now we're at the point in the Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, where Gandalf tells Pippin to climb the rock wall and go light the beacons of Gondor. That's where we're at right now, and I'm hoping Herman Holst sees the beacon when it gets lit. But it should have probably been lit like a year ago.
Yeah.
My thing is, if you realized this was going to happen, why did you not start taking steps immediately post Lightfall, or when you realized Lightfall was not going to be good? Why did you not start taking steps then? Why were steps not taken in 2022 in the fall rather than, oh, poor us, we missed by 45% on our projections? Yeah, because you sold something to Sony that was not sustainable. the story that Jason did last fall about how it seems like guys like Pete are just kind of biding their time until their vesting kicks in from this purchase and they can just jump ship and saddle whoever's left with Marathon. That is feeling more and more accurate.
That feels pretty accurate at this point.
And that's fucking disgusting. Yeah. That's fucking disgusting to me.
I mean, this is like the Bobby Kotick thing all over again. Where he's
this is Bobby Kotick, but with vintage cars.
Yeah, Jesus.
Because as we continue on with this, we really have to bring this up. Internet sleuths realized Pete Parsons has spent $2.3 million over the past 2 years since the Sony purchase happened on vintage and rare cars. And one of the comments he made when he bought one of these cars is a public comment that you can go see, where he says, I take pride in, restoring and driving old cars as a hobby and taking them to show off in the community and to undervalued youth. Don't you fucking dare use charity as an excuse for spending $2.3 million. Don't you fucking dare.
Undervalued youth?
Undervalued youth.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I saw that he invited employees over to see the cars like 2 days before the heat.
Oh yeah, so this is great. We're in the fuck Pete Parsons portion of the show right now, ladies and gentlemen.
Is that just the title of the show? Is that the title of the episode?
Pete Parsons. Maybe I don't. Pete Parsons, no good, very bad day. I don't know. No good, very bad career. I don't know. But this is it comes out because she's been very outspoken since she got laid off in October. But Liana, who used to be one of the community managers, did a long tweet thread yesterday about how 3 days before she was laid off, she was talking to another community manager who I think a lot of us have put together is most likely Sam Bartley, who was also laid off, talking to them about how they could not afford groceries. Because for those of you who don't know, Liana's husband was laid off last year or the year before, and they were living on just her income. And how employee services at Bungie were a godsend because they were sending her home with food. And Pete came by and started joking about his cars and asking if they wanted to come see his cars after work. And then proceeded to lay them off 2 days later. Knowing full well this was going to happen also, mind you.
Right.
It's reprehensible, it's ugly, it's weird. We got a question tonight, and we're Knox, to be really clear, we're gonna save your question for next week because you actually have a game question, so we're gonna kind of save that for when neither of us is boiling with rage. Is this the end of Bungie? Is this the start of the end of Bungie as we know it? Jiggly Panda writes in and asks that. My friend, I hate to tell you this, that happened a while ago. The Bungie you knew has been gone for a while. I don't know. I don't know how long everybody's been playing. I know for sure the Bungie that Corey and I remember from the Halo days is long gone.
Oh yeah,
and like that's okay. I want to emphasize that's okay.
I would argue the Bungie when Halo 2 or when Destiny 2 launched is gone.
That's where I was going to next. The Bungie that a lot of our community is really familiar with, I feel, unless you're an old head like us, is you're familiar with Destiny 2 forward. And most of that team's gone. Most of the people that made your favorite memories are gone. The audio team, gutted. Michael Salvatore is gone. Chris Barrett is out of there. He moved over to Marathon. We don't even know he's still at Bungie at this point. Scott Naylor, who was one of the producers, he's gone. He's over at Marathon. Luke Smith is no longer working on the game. Mark Noseworthy, no longer working on the game. Joe Blackburn's not there anymore. Most of your story designers are gone. Tocom no longer works on Destiny. You know, a lot of the systems guys no longer work on Destiny, even if they're still there working on Marathon or working in incubation. You know, they're no longer there. And yeah, I would argue that the Bungie that we even knew, 5 years ago is gone. It's gone now. It started going away last year with the 100 layoffs because old Bungie never would have done that.
You know what this
Yeah,
is reminding me of, real quick?
what?
This feels like 2012, 2013 BioWare. Where
So I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up later.
Mhm.
Except I was going to take it a step further. This reminds me of post Anthem BioWare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is for me. This is from when a studio that was really celebrated puts out some not well received projects, or projects that are good and don't really get the traction. Dragon Age Inquisition, good game, didn't really get the traction it needed to though. Maybe I'm just totally out of the loop. Dragon Age fans, please tell me if I'm wrong. Mass Effect Andromeda, obviously not the most beloved Mass Effect game. And then Anthem, do we really even need to bring up Anthem? Like,
Yeah.
Anthem was so bad that, now we're running around saying that, man, if Veilguard isn't good, is BioWare going to even exist anymore? We're kind of at the point where we're like, damn, if Marathon isn't good, is Bungie going to exist anymore?
Right.
Like, I would argue that at least, unlike BioWare, we haven't had to bring back, Joe Staten 3 different times like they have Casey Hudson.
Yeah.
But, we're at a point where, and this is something that Jeff talked about today on Games Mess, saying that, also, by the way, Anthem was the last game they released, and that was 5 years ago. And Mass Effect Andromeda was 8 years ago, or 7 years ago. Jeff basically said they're staking the future of the studio on Marathon. That they are absolutely convinced this is going to be an amazing game. That the C-suite at Bungie believes this is a 2025 release and the expectations for this are sky high. They basically think they can do to extraction shooters what they did to basically, Destiny launching games as a service and Halo popularizing console FPS. They essentially think that Marathon can do that. And man, I have not seen a single person excited for this game. I do not know a single person who is looking forward to Marathon.
This feels like a step, and by step I mean like a tiptoe past Concord is what it feels like.
That's actually a really good comparison because I want to say it was Jason was talking about games as a service earlier today, and about because people were outraged, that, Bungie didn't have their shit in order, and they were telling people like Naughty Dog that they shouldn't proceed with factions. They robbed us of factions. Like, man, I'm gonna tell you, the funniest possible fucking timeline is that factions didn't get made, but Bungie said Concord should get the green light.
Right.
That is like the funniest fucking timeline to me. But also, I think that they'd also kind of realized you have to be one or the other. You either have to fully be ready to commit to multiplayer and make that transition, or you need to stay a single player development team. I think Bungie themselves had come to realize that. Mm-hmm. Because look at the other, and this is what Jason was kind of getting at, look at the other studios that have pivoted from making all single player games to suddenly always online games. Rocksteady went from the Arkham series to making fucking Suicide Squad. Crystal Dynamics goes from making the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy to Avengers. Obviously Bungie goes from Halo to Destiny. That's one of the few that actually worked out. Where was the other one he had? I have the list here somewhere. The other ones that I was thinking of, BioWare with Anthem, and then another cautionary tale, Arcane Austin with Redfall. And I don't think that the advice they were giving was necessarily bad, but man, it's hilarious to me that the project that was an incubation that gets getting spun off is fucking Gummy Bears. That is the funniest fucking thing to me. That mobile MOBA style game is the one that is going to make it out of the purge.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely phenomenal to me. I love it. I love it so much.
Right.
Oh boy.
This
So all right. So let's move into today's events before I get back to fuck Pete Parsons some more. Jeff comes out and does Games Mess this morning, and maybe the best look that we're going to get at Bungie as a studio for a while. Outside of Jason's piece tomorrow, which if you're when you're listening to this, that piece is probably going live. If you're listening to this Friday morning. Pete Parsons is not leaving. That was basically how him and Jan Jerome opened up the show. Pete Parsons is not leaving. But being disliked by his former and current employees is an understatement. Would not be surprised if basically they were like, they fucking hate him. That's essentially what the first couple minutes of this show were like. Everybody fucking hates Pete Parsons. That works there, that doesn't work there. They all pretty much agree he needs to go. And Sony may have to Sony genuinely might have to step in here, like within the next week or so, and remove him.
I bet they do. I bet they do.
Because I did not realize this was fully a thing already. Herman Hulst has already moved to take control of Bungie. Bungie now officially is under the SIE banner. It was separate underneath PlayStation. It is now fully underneath SIE as a PlayStation studio. It is no longer an independent subsidiary. They have basically lost their autonomy. Is not completely gone, but it might as well be at this point.
Yeah.
Which is a drastic change from 2 years ago when Pete promised, in the Washington Post nonetheless, that nothing was going to change.
Right.
Well, then he overestimated profits by 45%. You can understand missing by like 5, maybe 10%. 45%, you deserve to lose your job over that one. And that should have happened 10 months ago.
Yeah.
They said they would not be surprised if Pete's compensation from the Sony purchase alone was $500 million or in that neighborhood. Would not be surprised at all if that was his compensation for this. I think that's wild speculation personally. I don't know how to judge these things. He made a boatload. Let's put it that way. He made tens of millions out of this. 500 though, I think is a little high. That's Bobby Kotick numbers, man. I don't think he made 500 million, but Final Shape is estimated to have sold about as well, if not slightly under what Lightfall did. I could not find exact sales on this, but supposedly it exceeded expectations, but I couldn't find an actual source on it. But the monthly active users has already dipped compared to this time after Lightfall's release, and I would argue that the schedule is way more open right now than it was then, with the very notable exception of Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree.
Mm-hmm.
I think this has been more wide open than post Lightfall. But who the fuck knows? I don't know where to find that. As of like 5 months ago, there were only 25% pre-orders compared to Lightfall, but that was before like the whole relaunch of the Final Shape marketing campaign and everything else. So I don't actually know what happened, but it has had less sale numbers than Lightfall. And remember, they did not prance around with Lightfall's numbers like they did with the Witch Queen. The Witch Queen, they were bragging they had over 1 million pre-orders with like a month to go and this and that. I remember us actually celebrating that.
Yeah.
And, look at how that is. This time around, there were C-suite layoffs, including the chief business officer. Congratulations. He or she probably should have been fired last fall. You missed revenue projections by 45%. Goodbye. Right. Any company in the world will tell you goodbye at that point. Those are the mistakes that cost you your job and should not cost your team. Here's the content. Kind of the future of what Bungie's working on, though. The internal expectation at Bungie is that future Destiny 2 content will be lighter and faster to market, unlike taking, a year and a half for the final shape. We don't know what that looks like yet, but they are not calling expansions anymore. They are referring to them internally as content packs. So if you want to know what that sounds like House of Wolves and the Dark Below.
Yep.
That sounds like Curse of Osiris and Warmind. That does not fill me with confidence. Yeah. That actually is the antithesis of confidence for me. Even though I've said that I wouldn't mind a return to drops like that, I'm going to need to prove that you can actually pack those full of content before I'm okay with it.
Yeah, what is the cost of that content too, right? I mean, not to get
what's the cost of it? I feel like it's got to be like $20 a piece.
I mean, maybe is it? Because armor costs $20 a piece, Josh.
I understand that. I mean, like we've gone into at length on what we think that the Eververse should be priced at, that it's way overpriced and this and that. But man, how did you guys get here? Is what I wanted. Marathon, according to Jeff, sounds like it is years away, but Bungie is insistent that this is a 2025 release. They are riding all their hopes on this. Sony has a lot riding on this. I don't think I need to underscore how hard it is for a multiplayer game to break through like the 6 or 7 dominant ones right now. Mm-hmm. It is really hard to get a game with multiplayer to have a sustained player base that goes beyond, those who are playing Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox, Call of Duty, and I'm going to say like 2K and FIFA. I think it's really hard to break out from beyond all of that. Mm-hmm. That right there is almost all of your online gaming.
Yep.
Both by time and revenue and users. So I don't know what that means going forward. Sony has had a really unexpected hit this year with Helldivers. They're praying and hoping this is another Helldivers situation. I think the thing is, Helldivers was marketed as a $40 game with, just the war bonds, and it was getting like little gradual updates and stuff, but it was just dumb fun with your friends, right? And it was not directly made by Sony. Sony published it. This was made by Arrowhead, which is not a Sony subsidiary or an SIE studio. Concord, on the other hand, is an in-house game, and that game I'm pretty sure is DOA. I'm like 99% certain that game is dead on arrival.
Yeah, seems very
Yeah. I think Fair Games, which we've seen nothing of, by the way, that's Jade Raymond's game. That's probably DOA. It is really hard to have a multiplayer game and only release on one console, even if your console is the PlayStation 5 and you're concurrently releasing on PC. Like that's kind of the whole thing, is you have to make sure you're at least getting it to PC, which Marathon and Concord will. But man, it is just really hard to break through beyond that. And that's going to be coming out at a time when there are other games to play. It's coming out right before the really busy fall season. Mm-hmm. I don't know anyone who's, looking forward to these games. And I got to lump Marathon in with that. We still don't know if Marathon's going to be a full priced game, if that's going to be free to play. The expectation is that it's free to play. But if it's free to play, like, damn, that thing's going to be microtransaction to all hell. We've heard different things like, oh, it's an extraction shooter, but you play with selectable heroes. And this just sounds like a fucking mess, man. So good luck pinning all your studio's hopes on Marathon right now, because I do not share your confidence.
Yep.
My favorite part of the entire pod this morning was Jan when it was explained to him that this is going to be an extraction shooter. He just goes, "Why?" Like, just why? Like, yeah, dude, we've been wondering for 2 years. Okay, this was teased way too early. It was leaking out. They did that CG trailer last spring, and this thing we're probably not even going to see gameplay from this until, I would say, absolute earliest to the Game Awards.
Right.
But if Bungie fucking shows up to the Game Awards this year, like, that, Jesus Christ. You just released an expansion that is a, like, legit fringe game of the year candidate, and you went and pulled this. Like, make a bad game, get laid off. Make a great award-winning game, believe it or not, still fired.
Yeah.
But here's what. Go ahead, Corey.
Oh, I was just gonna say I was listening to a couple podcasts today about this at work, and some people said, like, what is their motivation now to make sure that this game is the best they can possibly be, right? If you're just going to get laid off anyway. And, like, part of that's like, yeah, of course. But, you know, I mean, if you're going to try to get a job somewhere else, you're going to do the best you possibly can. But, like, at the end of the day, like, if you're just going to get laid off in a year or 6 months anyway, even after you deliver something like the final shape, right? Like, why bother? Why bother? And it made a lot of sense. I'm like, yeah, if I knew like half my team was leaving, and including me at some point, like, why bother? You know?
Yeah. Why fucking bother? Because there's no point. There's literally no point.
No point.
There's no point. And the final shape's out the door. So what's the motivation over there? Codename Payback was in fact real, but this was apparently shelved before the release of the final shape. This was put up on the shelf. This was not Destiny 3, but was described internally as the next Destiny. So take that however you want. The next saga, a spin-off, whatever. I've heard two different things. I've heard that it was supposed to be the beginning of the next saga. I've heard that it was supposed to be a spin-off game. I don't know which one it actually is. Maybe we'll get some clarity tomorrow with Jason in Bloomberg. But him and Jeff kind of had some conflicting thoughts on this one from what they had heard. But the only thing they were united in was this was never Destiny 3, which lines up with everything Bungie has ever said, that they were not working on Destiny 3. But he says Destiny 3 is not what they will be working on as a team in any meaningful capacity anytime soon. That is just insane. That is absolutely insane to me. But it's kind of making sense why we got Prismatic now. Like, if this is going to be like the big end, then there we go. I don't think that the game's going into maintenance mode, but I do think they're kind of in a spiral right now trying to figure out what to do. Dylan said that plans have not been impacted in terms of content. So maybe they were already scaling down. I don't really know, but I do think, like, it's funny. Bike tweeted this out the night before all of this came out, saying, man, we really need like a roadmap for the next 18 to 24 months. And I was of the opinion we were going to get that here in a few weeks with the upcoming, you know, hey, here's what's happening next year's stream that they always do in August, but also with the 10th anniversary coming up in September. I was under the impression we'd find out what Frontiers is and maybe a little beyond. But yeah. Then they briefly speculated if Bungie was directly responsible for Concord getting greenlit and factions getting canceled, which was really funny. I also don't know a single person in real life who actually wants. Let me put it this way: people want factions. I don't think they wanted a live service factions.
Yeah,
I think factions, if you had just bundled something like a multiplayer mode,
if it was the multiplayer mode for Last of Us 3, probably would have been fine.
Right. Or like you bundled it into Part 2 remaster for PS5 or something.
Yeah, that too.
But and then they were kind of talking a little bit about the community, and these are two guys that I don't. No offense to Jeff and Jan, I don't really get the impression they are like super looped into the Destiny community. They said there's a general feeling of that this may be the game may be entering a death spiral. And like I said, I'm not really ready to sound the alarm yet, but I'm watching Pippin climb that rock face real carefully right now to go light the beacons, because, man, just nothing that has happened has reassured me. We got a question back in June, a couple weeks into the final shape. I want to say Fox wrote it in. I may be wrong, but saying, are we back? It feels like we're back. And I said, yeah. And then here I am 6 weeks later having to walk that back and go, well, actually, no, we're not, because leadership is fucking dumb.
Yeah, this is leadership.
I don't think we're in some sort of death spiral or anything yet.
No,
yet.
I wouldn't call it a death spiral. I do think I do think a lot of the studio is in shock, and it's going to take some
Yeah,
time for them, like just the developers as a whole that are still there, to try to figure out what's next. In terms of like, where do we go from here? We just lost all of our friends. How do we progress through this? And then try to regroup and regather, and you know figure out which teams are gone and which teams are merging, and what stuff's being outsourced at this point. And if Sony comes in and
yeah.
does take over, like, does that mean Destiny is changing in a way that maybe they don't want it to? Like, there's a lot to consider, and that's got to happen relatively quickly, right? I mean, no, I'm not trying to like say anything negative or anything, but like, for the fan base and for the community to essentially not be a bunch of shitheads, you know, generally speaking. Uh, the developers have to get over this quick, and as humans, this is not something you get over quickly, right? It's just not, and it's totally understandable, and it sucks. It really, I feel for them. I feel just as bad for everybody that still works there, that, as I do everybody that got laid off.
There's a lot of survivor's guilt going around right now because this is now 2 massive layoffs that have happened. I
Yeah.
get the feeling that they aren't done. Um, just man, maybe maybe there isn't another round until we see how Marathon does when it releases. But
hmm
when you lay off this many like story people, for example, and this many key folks on your ongoing game, it doesn't paint a picture of confidence. That paints one to me like they have basically told Bungie you need to start cutting expenses somewhere, and Bungie probably feels like we've invested too much in Marathon at this point. We have to release it.
hmm
So they're kind of between a rock and a hard place because you can't move on to Destiny 3 and leave all the shit behind because then you've got hardcore players like myself who are like, "Oh, I'm not regrinding this stuff. I'm not grinding out new gear and starting from square one again." That is not I'm not interested in that at this point in my life.
Yeah.
I simply don't have the time for it. I do have a little bit from the GameFile newsletter that apparently the financial situation at Bungie has been so bad for so long that at least one source described as a well-connected former worker went so far as to claim Bungie faced dire consequences if the acquisition hadn't happened, saying the alternative history is insolvency. Holy shit. GameFile sources claim Bungie repeatedly missed its financial targets, leading to roughly 100 employees being laid off in November 2023. The second round happened, obviously, blah, blah. Within Bungie, the layoffs had been anticipated for some time. In December 2023, IGN reported the feeling within the studio was to face more reductions that the Final Shape didn't do well. But according to GameFile source, even the Final Shape being a major blockbuster success couldn't have stopped the layoffs. Indeed, with Destiny 2 on the wane some 7 years after its release, the Final Shape reportedly failed to outsell the previous expansion Lightfall, despite being a critical success. Former Bungie workers and other members of the games industry have been vocal in the wake of the layoffs, many of them blaming Pete Parsons. Their sentiments were echoed by those in GameFile's report, claiming Bungie sold things they were just not able to deliver. Parsons, for his part, blamed the cuts on the rising cost of development, economic conditions, and confirming the studio had been running in the red following delays to the Final Shape and Marathon. So, man, what a fucking catastrophe. What an absolute fucking catastrophe.
Yeah.
Man. Whew.
I just don't know what to say at this point anymore, Josh.
There
Like, I
is
just
nothing to
don't.
there is nothing to say. That there is nothing to say. Like we can sit here and point the finger at upper management all day long, and honestly, we should be like they should be held to task. I'm gonna say fucking unionize. That this comes in a week where we're hearing about Blizzard and Bethesda both unionizing and being recognized voluntarily by Microsoft. Basically, Microsoft and Team Xbox saying we're not going to get in the way. But they've seen the mass layoffs that have happened to their companies this year alone and have said, fuck it, we're unionizing now.
Uh-huh.
Bungie needs to be next. Bungie honestly should have done it after last year, but I don't know what else to say without talking ourselves in circles.
Yeah, I think the thing with unionizing is that it doesn't save jobs, which I think is, a lot of people think it
It
does,
doesn't save jobs, but it
but
does.
protects it protects people in terms of like, they can't just be let go
Yes.
a day, like an hour after they find out about all this stuff happening, or it does help them find new jobs within their kind
It
of
provides better severance and
yeah.
better benefits while you're a worker and when you get laid off. As well as fuck, I just lost my train of thought. I mean, it's better working conditions overall because then at that point you can go to the National Labor Board. It would help to eliminate crunch in this industry, especially.
Mhm.
I just it's got to happen, and the inflection point is coming for AAA development.
Mhm.
It's coming, and it's coming rapidly. This incident this week is going to speed that process up.
Yep.
And let's not pretend like Bungie's the only studio that's done this. Like we've covered at length on Xbox Casuals this year. We've talked about Riot. We've talked about Microsoft. We've talked about the closure of Tango GameWorks. We've talked about Embracer Group for a lot over the last couple of years. We talked about Activision and EA and Ubisoft and all these other conglomerates. They're far from the only studio doing it. It's just really shocking that you had to do this twice in a 10-month span. And you basically knew this was going to happen. And you had people in an all out sprint to finish this.
Yeah.
You put out probably the best reviewed product you've had since Halo Reach, also.
Mhm.
And this was the result.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add? We have a couple questions that I am going to get to tonight.
Let's just get to the questions because I mean, we're going to talk in circles all night. The last point I just want to say is like, this really pisses me off. I mean, we quote unquote knew this was coming at some point, but
Yeah.
I think we all hoped that with the final shape being as good as it was, and Sony kind of creeping in a little bit, like maybe we could avoid this, but this still like really pisses me off, and it pisses me off more that like leadership of these companies don't take accountability, right? Like, and I know we've already said that, and we're talking in circles now, but I'm like really fucking pissed off about all this, and I'm just trying not to like scream into the microphone, So, all right, Josh, let's get to questions.
All right, we only have a couple that we haven't already addressed. A lot of these were asking us to kind of address things we were already talking about. We kind of talked about big expansions already. We've talked about Pete and his classic cars. I'll be in a better joking mood about that next week, frankly. But Nadiki writes in and asks, with Bungie now having laid off approximately a quarter of their workforce total, what do you think this means for the launch of Marathon and for Frontiers? Frontiers is probably not impacted. I'm going to be honest. It sounded like that was probably going to be a smaller scale thing. We had already thought that. We already thought that wasn't going to be a major expansion to begin with.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's really being impacted. We'll know more here, hopefully in a few weeks.
Will we?
Marathon. I don't know what this means for Marathon. Marathon sounds like it's really struggling over there. But then again, they just had a playtest a week and a half ago that apparently went amazing. They flew in creators from all over the country to play it, and the few people I saw talking about it on socials, they were like, I can't really say much, but I had a blast. And that really shocks me. That really surprises me. I don't think this is a game that's going to appeal to the masses. I think an extraction shooter with heroes is a very tough sell. I think either one of those on their own would be a hard enough sell. Putting them both together it's hard. The Bungie name isn't what it used to be. It's just not. It's not like when they came out and showed Destiny for the first time, and we all freaked out because we're like, "Oh my god, it's a new universe from the creators of Halo." We've been waiting for this for 3 years, and we're finally seeing it. And then look at how many years it took for us to get a proper game.
Yeah.
So I don't think Frontiers is impacted too much right now. We'll see. It remains to be seen. Like Corey, you nailed this on the head. we don't know what the pricing is going to look like for any of this either, and that's really concerning to me. There's leakers who have credibly leaked things in the past who are coming out of the woodwork to say things now. They're conveniently saying things now, right? And so I'm choosing not to listen to any of that. But there's been some who've been like, "Oh yeah, you're going to get like 2 like Warmind sized ones a year and 2 free seasons a year." And I don't believe we're getting anything for free in this game ever again. I'm going to be really pessimistic because Tiger Jesus asks us how many Pete Parsons classic cars would it take to reprise Wrath of the Machine. I'm officially calling it here, ladies and gentlemen. The dream of Wrath of the Machine is dead.
Yeah.
It's dead. It's not happening at this point.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting it.
And in fact, I'm going to go a step further. 2 raids a year, don't expect to ever see that again. It's over. It's done.
They got to give us something. They sold us a dungeon pass.
Well, the dungeon pass is one thing. You'll still get your dungeons because you already paid for it. You're not getting raids. Raids were never part of the dungeon pass. You were getting you get the raid that's included with the expansion, and they've been doing a reprised raid. You'll probably still get a reprised raid this year at some point, just because it's probably already done. We know one of the people who was laid off today, who was a huge bug fixer and QA tester for them, said that the dungeon is done. The next dungeon's done. Yeah. They've already bug tested it. So that makes me think we're getting a dungeon next episode and probably the episode after. I don't know what you do about 2 raids. I think part of the reason that they went to this model is so that they don't have to worry about doing 2 raids a year anymore. Like, that was a calculated move made long ago. And I don't even know how much it cost them to do the reprised raids. It can't be that significant, though. Let's be honest. I do think we need to probably be a little bit more vocal as a community about, man, if y'all are going downhill, can we at least get stuff unvaulted? Can you at least like dedicate some of your remaining people to doing that?
Yeah.
And put that stuff back in the game, even if you don't change the mechanics up, just so we have access to it. Because, and I mean, I cracked up earlier when I saw Ronnie in Discord say this. I want to find his exact post. I'll be playing until the server shut down, end comment, period. I laughed really hard seeing that. I want you to know that I had a hell of a day.
I hope that
made me laugh.
I hope the last Bungie employee puts the John Travolta "Where's Everybody" meme from where he's like kind of looking around, "Where's everybody?" and that's just Ronnie in the tower. The last day of the servers are up.
Hang on, I may have something. Oh shit. Okay. So this is coming out right now from GameSpot tonight. Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy are 2 of the folks who were laid off as of yesterday.
What?
Yep. This afternoon on Game Mess Decides, Jeff Grubb confirmed the duo were working on Project Payback, a new game set in the Destiny universe, but were let go as part of sweeping job losses at the now PlayStation-owned studio. Smith and Noseworthy were labeled as working on Payback. It was going to be the next big thing for Destiny, but not Destiny 3. They were caught in the executive and leadership shakeup mentioned in the blog. Payback has been shelved. Luke Smith was the executive director at Bungie and become a notable public-facing rep for the studio, having guided Destiny 2's narrative back to a place that excited fans and more clearly set up a long-term story for the sci-fi shooter. Noseworthy, meanwhile, was vice president of the Destiny universe and responsible for the overall strategy of Destiny as an intellectual property and a business. Holy shit.
Well, I know why Luke Smith, his Twitter is almost all deleted except for his name.
So I think he wiped a lot of that a while back, though. Luke hasn't been active on Twitter in a long time, because I periodically check in there.
Yeah, but
people were noticing yesterday, before the news was breaking, that he had wiped his Twitter. So he may have known and just wiped more of it. But as of yesterday, his bio still said that he was working at Bungie.
Jeez, man. Oh my god. What is going on over there?
How? Okay, in what goddamn world Are we getting rid of Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, but not Pete goddamn Parsons?
Oh my god. This is, man. This is oh my god. Josh, what is happening over there?
I don't know, but my dreams for a Destiny anime just died in real time on this podcast.
They sure
I
did.
would say the hopes for anything that is not apparently content drops is pretty much up in flames right now. Dash any hopes of an anime, of a multimedia series, of a comic. Dash any of those hopes.
Jeez. Man, this is happening in real time, everybody. Real time on this show.
I'm talking with our Discord right now.
Jeez.
Yeah. It has never been more over than in this moment. That honestly, this is more concerning to me than a lot of the other departures were already very, very, very bad.
Right.
You're getting rid of Hazel and Robert off of the narrative team. That's alarming. You fired Michael Salvatore last time around. That's alarming. You're getting rid of the guys who guided the franchise, though. And that, to me, says you don't have confidence in this product going forward. And Pete needs to fucking go. Luke and Mark are the guys you're getting rid of right now? Really?
Me?
Are you kidding me? Like, yes, I know they've made some bad decisions. It's not their fault that you overpromised on 45% profit margins.
Right.
You know, I would argue it's probably not their fault that the Eververse is the way it is, or that seasons had to be the way that they were. I would guess that that came from the top. And they were told you need to have perpetual revenue coming into this and this and that. God bless America. I don't...
Jeez.
Holy shit. I do not know what this I'm like legitimately at a loss right now.
Oh my god.
I do not know what to say.
When Josh doesn't know what to say.
For what it's worth, Luke Smith's bio on Twitter still reads executive creator director for Bungie. Or for Destiny at Bungie. I'd also like to note that by getting rid of Luke, you're getting rid of the guy behind the Vault of Glass.
Yeah.
So, fuck you. You also lost Joe Blackburn stepped down, who was, one of the geniuses behind the raids and then the Prophecy Dungeon as well. So, yeah, oh my god. I am...
Yeah. What? Oh my god. What the fuck is going on, man? I feel like we're watching this fall apart in like real time, like real time.
I can't. I actually cannot believe this broke while we're recording the show. We were about to wrap up too. Holy shit! I have had my concerns and my gripes and my complaints about Luke Smith over the years. I want to be really clear. I've shared some of them on this very show. I don't know what is going on here.
Right.
This is the moment where I am officially ready to hit the big red panic button. If you are getting rid of Luke and Mark, I think you could probably withstand Mark. But let it be known, Forsaken was Forsaken and Taken King was Taken King because of the group of Luke, Mark, Chris Barrett, Scott Naylor, guys like that. It was largely the way it was because of that. For a guy who, something that has stuck with me for a long time was Luke talking about, and it was in the lead up to Beyond Light, I want to say, talking about the struggle that he went through when Curse of Osiris released, and he was wondering if they were even going to exist anymore as a studio, if the game was going to exist anymore, if he was going to have a job. He was panicking. He was at the studio at all hours of the night, this and that. And then for this to happen, this is a guy who should have been allowed to leave on his own terms. I'm going to say that. Destiny, as you know, it doesn't exist without Luke Smith's contributions. He may have not been the guy behind the original Destiny, but he was one of the guys behind the Taken King. Like I said, Vault of Glass. Vault of Glass was his baby. And because he was the guy who was like, what if we did a raid, but like, they were already designing the vault. They were already designing raids. And he was like, what if we made it kind of like a World of Warcraft raid? And that ended up being a trend that got set in games for the next decade. So many games, The Division comes to mind immediately, have tried to replicate a Destiny raid. And nobody has even gotten close to that feeling. They can't even match the original. They can't even match the Vault, which is the original. And that is still like doing Vault for the first time is like one of my greatest memories in a video game because it was so unlike anything I'd ever done. To get rid of the guy who
This is
your pod didn't die. We're just silent because we don't know what else to say.
Pregnant pause, everybody. I just don't know what to say. I mean, the Vault of Glass is why so many people continue Destiny after that interesting vanilla campaign, we'll say. And that's what kept people going was Vault. Man, can you send that article in the chat? The Luke Smith one?
I've already moved on from it. It's on GameSpot's front page, though, I believe.
Okay. Man.
Here, I just DM'd it to you on what you call it, Discord. Yeah. Man.
Oh my gosh, dude, this is
so. And then crazy. You got, God bless America. You've got Paul Tassi over here going like, something tells me the story isn't over, and this may not be the loss you're imagining it to be, and like,
it seems pretty lost to me.
Yeah, it seems like you need to shut the fuck up for right now until any of us know what's going on.
Oh my God.
I do think that he sums it up really well here, though. Too much is going on every other hour here. Gonna wait to do anything until Jason's piece comes out tomorrow morning. None of it is good and all points to the same conclusion. Destiny scaling down, Sony absorbing and taking over.
Yeah.
Man, I would strongly encourage you, if this is your main game right now, maybe start trying out some other games.
Yeah.
I love this universe. I feel like I'm like Ronnie. I'm going to be here till the bitter end. But
yeah,
I think that only goes so far as I believe in the content that's being delivered. Like I'm actually very excited for the next 2 episodes and for the dungeons and things like that. But beyond that, I don't have any obligation because I've played all the content I paid for. That's my biggest irk, is leaving content on the table that I paid for. Mm-hmm. And so I don't plan on doing that. But man, this makes me less invested in going and getting gear, in min-maxing and trying out new builds. This is about the worst possible scenario for me. To get rid of your actual director is just, oh boy.
Yeah, this is man. They must really have all their eggs in the marathon basket at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know what
for what it's worth, MTash, who used to be a pretty big Destiny content creator, said that at one of the Bungie summits, he was told we would essentially have to stop all work on Destiny 2 to make Destiny 3 possible in a timely manner. And Paul follows that up with, that's how you get Overwatch 2. So, man.
This is man.
Not great, Bob.
Yeah, I'm stuck. I don't know what to say, Josh. I literally don't know what to say at this point. I feel like we're literally watching not just Destiny, but Bungie kind of die right in front of us. In a way.
Something about this isn't passing the smell test for me right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, God, I think it was Liana who said yesterday that like over the next couple of years, things are going to come out of what's gone on at Bungie. Basically, the past like 2 to 3 years. And I'll put it this way. She just tweeted out, sometimes it's in plain sight and sometimes it's easier to make something appear like something else so you're not looking at it and not seeing it. Sometimes it's right there, but not the way you think. So somebody replies and says, I'll ask you this. Hopefully you reply with some light about this. Was Luke or Mark part of that bad apple group at Bungie that everyone says is the bad thing happening at Bungie, or were they amazing? And she just comes back with no comment. That doesn't really inspire confidence either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like, come on, let's not dance around here. So this makes Pete look even worse to me.
Yeah.
So
is
imagine that. Somebody tweeted on my timeline, how many cars is Luke Smith worth to Pete Parsons? Yeah. Jesus Christ. I'm genuinely worried I'm going to have to get on here on a Friday night and do a part 2 tomorrow.
Yeah, this is
because depending on what the Jason article is and what else comes out while I try to sleep tonight,
I'm really
there may be an emergency second pod tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what Jason has to say tomorrow. Really,
he's the best in the business for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, you can say all you want about him, but he does his job and he does it well, So.
Yeah, you can have your opinions about like how he interacts with people, or more like how he used to interact with people, which was very stuck up and very snobby.
Mm-hmm.
Jason is one of those guys who like he's extremely good at his job and he knows that he is.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I know Jason's personality because I'm the same fucking way.
You are?
I like to be very high and mighty. I tend to be very condescending when I feel like I know something that other people don't. Mm-hmm. And I really want to see what this piece says, because he's one of two people I really trust on reporting from inside of Bungie. Because I don't really consider Jeff Grubb a reporter.
No.
He's an insider. He's not really a reporter to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I consider Jason and Rebecca Ballantyne to be reporters.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see if Rebecca posts anything tomorrow either. That's the other one that I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop on, because she's reported a lot of the HR problems at Bungie over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a hiccup there. Corey, do we have any other things to say before we get out of here? Because I'm afraid if we stay on the air any longer, there's going to be something else that breaks.
Yeah, I'm not like, man, I don't know what to say, man. It's just going to sound like ranting and angry.
Yeah.
Angry ranting, and I don't want this show to be that, right? Even though we kind of just did it for an hour and a half, I don't want it to go any longer.
I think it had to be. I think we had to, because it was cathartic.
Yeah, but I don't want to talk anything else about it until we know more, right?
Right.
I'm at that point where, like, okay, we've kind of gotten out our first round of stuff. Now let's see what the reporters have to say, and the people who are going to break more stuff tomorrow, and then we can kind of react to that, and kind of come back with, I'd say, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but that's not really going to happen for a while on the show, at least. So yeah, I don't know. I think, look, my last thing though is, like, I feel for everyone who is still at Bungie. I feel for everybody who was let go at Bungie. and I don't know how many of them listen or not listen to this show, if at all. But if this really is kind of the beginning of the end, you guys gave us a hell of a 10 years, regardless of the ups and downs. You know, Josh and I wouldn't be friends without this game.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the Final Shape was a fucking awesome last hurrah if that really was what it was. You know? So that's kind of all I have to say for now.
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, the focus here is, yes, horrible C-suite leadership. How we got here is going to be a mystery for a little while until more details come out. And I expect more employees and former employees to be forthcoming in the days and weeks ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to remember, you know, like this is beyond, you know, games that we enjoy playing and beyond our entertainment. Real people's lives are shattered by this.
Mm-hmm.
220 people just had their livelihoods completely, well, 218 people had their livelihoods completely destroyed. I'm sorry, Luke, Mark, you guys have made a shitload of money from this studio, and I know that for a fact.
I mean, they're shocked, but they're fine.
They're shocked, and listen, like Luke, if Luke wants to continue working in games, he will get hired immediately.
Yeah.
So many of these people are going to get hired, hopefully, right away. But then I look at, you know, people who were laid off in October who still don't have work.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating. I would say, you know, this is one of my favorite games ever. Bungie is arguably my favorite studio of all time, but it is a shell of what it used to be, in terms of its values, in terms of its morals. And, you know, I feel for everyone who was let go. I feel for the people who are still there, who have, you know, the survivor's guilt that they shouldn't be there. Because one of the things that we don't really talk about when it comes to these layoffs that gets really underreported is the knowledge that gets lost in these layoffs.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're letting go of senior positions and senior designers and environmental artists and things like that. And there's nothing else to say.
Yeah.
So we'll be back when we know more. It might be, depending on how bombshell of an article this is, it may be tomorrow afternoon. But if it's not too bombshelly, that would be the only way that I think, barring Pete Parsons stepping down, that's the only way you're going to hear from us on this feed before next Thursday. We'll probably talk about this and any new developments on Xbox Casuals coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely.
Because, oh boy, we've got things to talk about over there, too.
Yeah, do we? God, I forgot about all this shit. Oh, God, dude. What is happening?
I don't know, but don't work in games, people.
Are we going to have to be Concord casuals soon, Josh? Is that what we're going to turn into?
No, I will retire at that point. I feel confident saying that if it ever came down to that, I would retire from podcasting on the spot.
But, all right, Josh, do you want to get out of here? I feel like we've.
Yeah, let's get out of here before anything else shatters my dreams.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Josh! If something happens in the middle of the night, we'll have to do a midnight pod or something.
I will sleep. I will sleep soundly.
Oh man, thank you everybody for listening to this episode of Tower Casuals.
Even you, Ronnie, who said this was the first time you hadn't looked forward to an episode since you started listening.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie.
I didn't know whether to be insulted or not by that, by the way.
Ronnie, you're fired.
He's not fired. I could never fire Ronnie.
That's fair. It's true. Yeah, we can't fire him. I need him to take me through some raids before the servers go down. Josh, thank you for your time as always. Where can we find you?
Twitter, Josh_Finn, 2 N's. My feed's not a pretty place right now.
Jesus Christ.
Be prepared if you want to see a grown-ass man cry over a comic ending on Sunday morning.
Oh, My Hero Academia.
My Hero Academia is publishing chapter 430. On Sunday morning, I'll be an emotional, just desolated wreck. But it's okay. It's okay. All good things. You know, that's kind of the theme of tonight. You know, at some point, all good things come to an end.
It's true.
In a very morbid way.
Yeah, that is.
I'm not at all equating one of my favorite stories ever with another one of my favorite stories ever, one of which was clearly treated way better than the other.
It's fair. You can find me at I am Corey HD on them socials. Follow us at Tower Casuals. Subscribe to the channel. Do all the things. I want to thank everybody for watching and or listening. And hopefully, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.